What is up, party people? Happy Friday to you.
Damn!
That's from Friday. All right, so here's what's going on. Market seems to be a little quiet. Buyers a little quiet in the marketplace. Is this something that's temporary? Is this something that we need to be worried about? Is this something that could cause a crash? I'm on like crash watch 24/7. Everyone's asking me about it constantly, which is great. It's great. Love to talk about it. Love analyzing it. And people are so, through a microscope, we're looking at this market now so different from 2008 where everyone was oblivious. Everyone was so oblivious. I'm going to talk about this story here. Elon Musk sent an email to employees. Let's see what that looks like. Elon Musk is a pretty hardcore CEO. Like, takes no BS, which is really interesting because he seems like kind of a nice guy, but he's just actually very straightforward. We'll look at that. This is a story that came up as well. We're going to look at this one. I don't think it's inflation that's the real issue. It's really just spending. And whenever we have growth, when people's incomes grow, they tend to change their spending habits. Buy a nicer house, buy a nicer car. And I don't know if this is something that's ingrained in us, something that we're taught or not taught. But for me, I don't change a thing. I just don't change a thing. Doesn't matter. I always live at the least means possible without being uncomfortable. But it's different for everyone. We're going to look at rates too. I'll go through that with you. We're going to look at home values. We're going to look at what does it look like? What is this? What's going on? Okay. So first thoughts for me on just the state of the quietness. For the past 2 years, we've had a very strong seller's market, extremely low rates, really big boom in real estate. Even during those times, though, there would still be a week, sometimes two, when it would just seem to start to get quiet. And I'd tell my wife, hey, it's getting quiet. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do. Did everyone abandon me all of a sudden? Or, that you start thinking crazy things. And then all of a sudden it gets really busy again. And you're like, oh, I should have relaxed and enjoyed that little break in the madness instead of freaking out about things changing. And so, there's been multiple instances like that during the bull run. Now we've had a little bit more sustained time. I'd say this is 2 or 3 weeks in a row of just sort of quietness. And what's not great about that from a market standpoint, if you're a seller, is that this also tends to be the time of the year school gets out. A lot of families do family vacations in June. June is a month that usually is a little bit slower, just with activity, not with closings. Remember, because closings take a month or two or whatever, time frame. Let's call it between 30 and 60 days to come to fruition from the time they get into contract on average. So it's not necessarily a slow month for closings, but it is a slower month in general just for activity. So we're kind of coming into that at not the best time for sellers. Good time for buyers, though, because there should be more opportunity. When we see something like this come out, and I'm going to get to this story in a second, but I want to go ahead and show you what's happening with interest rates first. Derrick Evans here, NMLS 155010. That's right, I'm an OG. I have a 6-digit NMLS. I got one of the first ones that they handed out. You can call or text me, send me an email if you want to buy or refi. That's what I'm here for, and I got lots of time.
Check, please.
On my hands.
Yeah.
So let's get me out of the way here. Let's get my little disclaimer out of the way here, and let's look at some things. First thing is interest rates. Now, mortgage bonds here. Some people in the mortgage industry yell at me and say, you need to call them mortgage-backed securities. Call them whatever you want. I don't care. You could also call stocks paper-backed securities. Company-backed securities. It doesn't matter what you call it. But what we have, and we've been talking about this now for weeks, reverse head and shoulders that I told you was setting up long before any of this action here happened, long before we actually got this. Is so pretty right now. It's really, really nice. It looks really, really good. And it's holding today. Notice the wicks here. Okay, so you're seeing buyers come in at this level. They believe that that's a good opportunity to invest. And so this is still intact. This still looks really good, even though we're down 23 basis points today. And even though rates have gotten worse over the last few days by a little bit, depending upon the program. If you're doing like a conventional cash out, rates will get more worse than if you're like doing a 25% down conventional purchase with 800 credit. Your rate probably hasn't changed much the last few days, but we've seen, the recession there of, call it 70 basis points or so from this interim high. And, it is also sort of consolidating if you really look at this thing, but the reverse head and shoulders is there. So this is all my discussion around this is all still intact. Just want to make sure we're tracking that. Okay. Now let's take a closer look at what happened here on the biz side of things. So Elon Musk sent all the Tesla employees an email calling for a 10% headcount reduction. Now, I will tell you, remember, always read the headline, but try to always read the articles. If you read a headline and it influences you in any way, you owe it to yourself and anyone that you're going to talk to actually read the article. All right? And notice how immediately in the key points, Tesla's cutting 10% salaried employees. Not a 10% headcount reduction. So almost immediately here, before we even get to the article, they're already backpedaling the facts. We can read the email. The email's in here. This was leaked to everybody, subject headcount reduction. This is Friday, June 3rd, today. Tesla will be reducing salaried headcount by 10% as they have become overstaffed in many areas. Note, this does not apply to anyone actually building cars, battery packs, or installing solar. Hourly headcount will increase. So what he's doing here as a CEO is he's saying, look, I think we have some people on salary who really aren't doing anything, not being productive. So we're going to look more at hiring people to do specific jobs where we can pay them for work done instead of paying people a salary and have them sitting in an office. Or I know there was another instance where he said, hey, if you're not showing up at Tesla, then we are assuming that you've resigned. It's hardcore. You don't become a billionaire if you aren't. So this is sort of false propaganda. Remember what I said, expect more news stories that are negative in nature, with the concept being that the news, the media, all these people, they want a very negative scenario. It's good for business. So you're going to continue to see things like this that don't actually add up. What is really happening here? What is really happening here is something like, is this crash worthy? Does this mean the crash is on its way? Here's what I can tell you. In 2008, when we had the worst real estate crash possible caused by the bonds that support and attach to and securitize home loans for United States real estate, that was a worst case scenario. We didn't have any of this. There were warning signs everywhere, and they were just completely ignored by everybody. There were ticks up in foreclosure. There were layoffs. There were things like that, and no one paid any attention to it. And it took years before we actually unmasked the bond fraud that had been going on, and that is when it collapsed because no one saw that coming. CEOs making smart moves to make small reductions in workforces to sharpen the pencil a little bit with expenses. This is not what a crash looks like, guys. This is what good business looks like. This is like, hey, we have a reduction in demand. Hey, we want to be more efficient. Here's what we're going to do. It's not just what a crash would look like. Let's get over here to what would a crash look like? So I get into comment wars all the time. Someone was saying, well, if this isn't what a crash looks like, then what does a crash look like? Okay, let me explain that. What if we had, we have this inflation that's hitting the bottom line. What if rates hadn't gone up and we still had 2.25% VA and FHA mortgages, and we still had 2.5% conventional mortgages, all-time lows. And for the next 2 or 3 years, we had 20% real estate growth, but the underlying economy was getting weaker. That's called a divergence. So we're seeing the prices of real estate go up exponentially, but we're seeing a divergence in that the fundamentals underlying the economy and everything are getting worse. If we were seeing something like that, then it would be worrisome. And some people would say, well, isn't that what we saw during COVID? No, that's what everyone expected. Everyone expected businesses to get wiped during COVID, but it was small businesses that got wiped during COVID, and big businesses crushed it. And that's the reason why the market took off. And it does look like a it does look like market manipulation when you look at the consolidation, the expectation, the quick recession, then the blowout. But what would make this look like a crash is if we saw it continue to go up and there were warning signs going off and CEOs weren't doing anything and people weren't reacting. Right now, people are definitely reacting. People are definitely pulling back. People are definitely taking a look and stepping back for a second. That's not what causes a crash. What causes a crash is when people don't do that. When people don't take a step back, when people aren't paying close attention to their finances, when CEOs aren't managing their companies well, they're getting paid ridiculous amounts of money anyway. Those are the things that cause crashes, not when you see things like this happening where companies, CEOs are making adjustments to maintain economic efficiency. Now, this story was really interesting because they're saying more wealthy Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Where does it show? It was a survey was people who are making $250,000 a year or more. Here it is. Top earners are stretched in. The report found, of course, of those earning $250,000 or more, 36% said they live paycheck to paycheck. So you would ask yourself, well, how is that possible? Everyone knows someone, whether you're aware of this or not, that is making a lot of money and doesn't have much to show for it. So we do have some spending problems out there. We really do. But people who are spending the money that they make are just good contributors to the economy. What we have to take a look at here, and something I'm going to be looking more closely at, is debt. Because if someone who makes this 250, if they are spending what they make, and that's what causing them to be paycheck to paycheck, then okay, so be it. But if they are making 250, they're paycheck to paycheck, and they're accruing credit card debt, that's a bigger problem, right? Because now if they give a reduction in income, not only do they need to change lifestyle, but they need to really dig in and maybe get some of the bone out of there so that they can pay their debt too. And that is the thing we have to kind of keep an eye on when we look at stuff like this. But again, notice the mantra of the headline. They're really fishing. The media really wants people to be bearish right now. That is what they are going to be pushing for some time. They really want you to be scared. They want you to think that there's going to be a crash. But at the same time, you'll see them post these stories where they say the president will say something like things are going great. Which it's which is it? Which is it, guys? It can't be both. So, but that's kind of what's going on. So you just have to watch this and understand that if you're a realtor, if you're a lender, whatever, your clients are seeing this, they're becoming fearful because they feel like they've gotten a warning about something. And is that really what's gone on? What does a crash look like? A crash looks like nobody thinking a crash can happen. And then 2 years later, a crash happens. That's what a crash looks like. Stock market pulling back after making, crazy decade-long run. That isn't too crazy, is it? A quick peel back on the market. I mean, how much are we down? Let's look at this. Let's just take a quick gander. Oh, is this thing still not working? Shoot, that has all of my pairings in there. Never mind. This is a Bitcoin chart. But all my pairings in my watch list over here seem to be gone. So I guess we won't find that out. Yeah, reload it, see what happens. What I was going to look at was just top to bottom, how much have we declined in the Dow, the S&P, the NASDAQ. I know it's somewhere between 20 and 25% for each one. And is that a reasonable pullback to say, hey, that could be the end of, the bad news? Is that what that means? Or is there more pain to come? A lot of people want you to believe that there's more pain to come. Why? Is there some benefit to them for that? Let's look at the NASDAQ because the NASDAQ is the one that has run the most. So let's just take a quick measurement. Why not? Let's go from the high. Oh, what's going on? To the low. How much? Oh, here we go. 31%. So the NASDAQ from the high to the low, 31%. That's pretty significant, guys. That's pretty significant. Now, I'm not saying the bottom is in by any means. I don't know. And there very well could be more pain in store. But that's a pretty significant chunk to just kind of slowly and quietly have a 31% pullback in the NASDAQ, that's very interesting to me, because that is enough to call it a bear market. That is enough. That is as much as many bear markets have seen. And to have that happen this quietly is very interesting to me. And it would just sort of make you think that, well, either there's a tremendous pain on the way, or the worst is over. The worst is behind us. But the big boys don't want you to know that. They don't want you to think that, because they want you to get out of the way.
Check, please.
So that they can do their thing.
All we want to do is pump you up.
And I think that is probably more likely. So when we look at this chart, does this look like this is real estate going back to the 60s? Does this move here? If this is the most significant move we've seen. I mean, if you just look at this chart, the move that we've experienced, this is the most significant one. I mean, we went up, what's this little bottom here? 322. This is for the nation, by the way. 322 up to 428 in, 2 years? So that's almost a 30% increase. It's pretty quick 30%. It's a big looking move right there. Big looking move. Could there be some pullback from that? There sure could. Are we starting to see things change in the marketplace? We are. In fact, we could, just for fun, why not? Let's do this. It's Friday. You guys want to have some fun or what? By the way, we're live here. If you want to shoot a comment, say what's up, feel free to do so. I think it's always interesting to go, and you have to use the same search criteria or you'll end up getting mixed messages. So I always do the same search criteria. I will change the price as prices change. Let's remove the outline here. We're on Redfin for sale price. Let's enter our max here at 800,000. I'm going to do detached homes. 3 bed, 2 bath. Well, let's see what we got. Remove the outline, please. Okay, a lot more numbers. There was 925 homes before we zoomed in, so a lot more properties there in the past. When I've done this same search in towards the end of last year and so forth, there was 300 on there, 400 on there. So I'd have 925. That shows you there are more homes on the market. Again, that's a good thing for buyers. If there is competition amongst sellers, that is a good thing for buyers, yeah? Right? So for buyers, that's good. Now, here's what's really interesting. Okay, and I have not looked at this until just now. This is totally live. But I don't see hardly any hot homes on here. Have we even seen one yet? Is there any hot homes on here? Did Redfin remove the feature for hot homes? Or do we literally not have a single hot home? Wow. Unless Redfin removed the hot home feature, which is possible, they of course could have done that, although I think it's a really cool feature. I don't know why they would have. I don't see a single hot home on here. So if that doesn't glaringly tell you, because for a couple of years there, we pulled this up and every home was a hot home. And for you, if you don't use Redfin, there's just a little bitty thing on here on the price of the property that will say hot home. And then when you look at it over here, it'll say hot home on the right side. And none of these, I haven't seen a single one. There isn't a single Redfin hot home on Redfin here. And this is under 800K, which is typically where you would see more of the hot homes in the lower price points. And I don't see a single one. So that is a very big clue that buyers have really, really pulled back, and this is creating less competition for them, more competition for sellers. This is creating a situation where, the agent starts to matter a lot more on the sell side. It always matters. But if there's more competition, then it matters more. So who your agent is, if you're looking to sell your home, that's going to matter a lot more now than it has in the past. This is really, really interesting to me that there isn't a single hot home on here. I can't find one. And I'm looking over here in Santee where there's been tons of hot homes. Just down Spring Valley here where there's a little bit lower price point. None, not one. Bananas. Okay. Well, I'm floored. And I hadn't looked this up before. I'm just doing this live. I had no idea that would be the case. I was totally expecting to look at the hot homes. And so what I usually like to do, which we can't do now, is look at the hot homes and say, all right, what's the difference between the hot home and the one that's near it that's similar in price? And try to figure out what the value differential is that the market is seeing there. We really can't even do that now. I don't know. I don't know if any of these. Let's click on one. We'll click on the one that's listed by Redfin since they're kind of poking it in our face here. And they usually do say some sort of statistic right here. Hey, this home is, and I don't see any of that stuff. So like usually there's something here that says this home is likely to sell within this amount of time, or, homes in this area sell on average, 31% of them sell in the first week or whatever. They usually have some stat in here and I don't see one. So I don't know what's going on with that either, but that's a very interesting thing. So we're seeing things change in the market here that are very good for buyers, not good for sellers. And make note, if you're a buyer, what you were hoping for, what you've been waiting for is now here. You have more inventory, you have more options, you have more hand. I'm seeing sellers doing, accepting offers under list, seeing, concessions, requests for repairs being entertained, lots of good things for buyers here. But is this, just the beginning, or is it going to get much worse? That's the question. A lot of people think, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. And while that's possible, I don't see any reason to believe that there is a macro issue with real estate. I don't see anything that would tell me that there's a macro issue with real estate. If they were, like in 2008, if they were building the heck out of units, remember in 2008, we were building incredible amounts of units. High rises are going up everywhere. It was bananas. And that's not going on right now. We don't have commercial creation of inventory like we did back then. So now it's just organic inventory. People who actually need to sell their homes, putting them on the market. You have a few projects, a few new builds here and there. Most of it's attached, but you don't have this massive amount of building going on, at least not in San Diego because it's not really possible. Maybe some other areas of the country you do. And then that's when it starts to get really bloody, right? Whenever you have a new builder whose project is just being finished. They've been waiting to sell their product for 2 years, watching this crazy bull market go, thinking that they can kind of put whatever price tag they want on it, and then all of a sudden, and then you have more resell properties hitting the market that you're competing with, and now all these sellers are competing for the buyers. That's good for buyers. Let's keep that in mind. That is good for buyers. Okay. I'm going to call it a week. You guys have an amazing weekend. I'll be here if you need me. Call, text, shoot me an email if you want to buy a refi, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care.